The term anarchy and anarchists gets thrown around a lot recently, but by and large it's not really used correctly. Anarchy has a specific definition, and, well, there are many different types of anarchy, but there are many things that anarchy is not. One thing that it is not is, well, the people that stormed the Capitol building in the United States. Those are not anarchists. The way it's often used in the news media, it's anarchist is someone who just wants to destroy things, someone who smashes windows and wants chaos in the world or something like that. But that's really not what anarchy really is. It's not what anarchists do. And yes, anarchists do occasionally smash stuff. They do want to disassemble the order that currently exists in order to bring about a different kind of world. But it's not one about chaos. It's not one about just removing government of all kinds and living like animals, although some anarchists do want that. What actually defines an anarchist and anarchy is a rejection of unjust authority. It's a rejection of power relationships that don't have a justification in the principles of justice and truth. This is set in contrast with a hierarchy. In a hierarchy, everything has a set order. There is something that is at the top, and then everything follows one after the next. The things that are above the things below them end up having control over those things, and power is exercised in this hierarchical fashion. The correct way for the world to be to someone who enjoys hierarchy is to have this predictable order of people, a rank ordering of people from most powerful to least powerful. This can be evaluated on the basis of a rank, of relative power, relative strength, seniority maybe, or, well, in our case, in this society, the amount of money you have. Hierarchies can be pretty effective in terms of organizing a group, creating a common sense for what it is we're doing. If you have somebody in command, in control of the group, who dictates orders and everyone follows those orders, well, yeah, you can coordinate a group very effectively that way. You can get everybody pulling in the same direction and coordinate the actions of that group to operate very effectively. But this isn't the only way to coordinate a group. Anarchists have very effective means of coordinating action as well. Even if there may be a person that's doing all the coordinating and generating leadership, it doesn't necessarily have to be done in a hierarchy. The hierarchy suggests that the person that's doing all the decision-making is in charge and effectively unquestionable, whereas an anarchist in a leadership role would be open to input, open to democratic decision-making from the people that they're working with. They're not in charge of things, but rather they are acting as a coordinator. An effective anarchist leader takes into account the needs and considerations of all the people that they're working with and draws in all of the input that those people might have as well in order that they can make effective decisions. And of course, the leadership in such a movement isn't set in stone. It can constantly be negotiated and constantly modified to meet the needs of the people that are involved in it. Take, for example, a worker cooperative, where it's not a person that owns the company making all the decisions, and then the people that are underneath them are set into this role by the amount of seniority or the amount of money that they have invested in this corporation. Instead, in a worker-owned cooperative, the leadership is determined democratically. The workers that own the corporation may vote on who they want to lead, or they may find someone that seems to have the right skills and the right ability to do this coordination role and just put them in a position. Now, this isn't a position of power. It's not a position of authority above all the others. It's a position of being able to do the coordinating labor. It's a form of labor just like any other form, but it has a ability to bring everyone else together. This is somewhat like the conductor in an orchestra. Whereas, yes, a band or an orchestra can play on their own with any sort of coordination, as long as somebody's got a sense for the beat and as long as everybody sticks with it. But it's often said that the musicians in an orchestra play their instruments, whereas the conductor plays the orchestra. But with certain exceptions, the conductor isn't, like, in command of the orchestra. They're not a dictatorship. I mean, usually. The conductor is usually going to be open to the input and the creative talents of the people that are in their orchestra. They're not tyrants. They're not there to squelch the creativity. They're here to draw out the creativity of the people that they're working with. An effective leader in this role is also a good educator and a good communicator. They may have an agenda of their own, but they do spend the time to educate and communicate that agenda to the people that they're working with so that they understand why they would want to make the decisions in the way that they're being prescribed to. The key thing to consider here is that the people who are good at leadership, good at coordination of different activities, aren't necessarily better than the people that are doing those activities. They simply have a talent for coordination, a specific form of labor. Some people just don't have leadership ability. They don't have the planning talent necessary to be able to coordinate labor. That doesn't make them lesser than the people that are doing that leadership or coordination. They're just talented in different ways. A good craftsperson, someone who can make a table really well, makes really good tables. That makes them excellent at the table making task. But they're not so good at coordinating the labor necessary to make tables. They wouldn't be able to run a table making factory. That's more of a task for somebody who's good at running factories. But they're not one or other is better inherently. They're not like by birth better. They're just better at different things. Anarchistic coordination can, though, have its problems. I've been involved in enough social activism to have experienced what some call the tyranny of structurelessness. In a non-hierarchical organization like this, there can sometimes be a vacuum of leadership. The leadership necessary to coordinate the rest of the people that are involved. There could either be a resistance for anyone to take leadership for fear of being seen as a dictator, or it could just be that there's too many people that are all trying to drive the ship at the same time. Both of these types of problems derive from basically a reaction to hierarchism in our standard society. Whereas we live in a very hierarchical world, the very rich people are in charge of everything, and politicians and the cops, and then the rest of us, all at the bottom. So for people that are resistant to that hierarchical mode of organization, it's only natural that they would want to reject any and all vestiges of that authoritative way of thinking. But that can lead to a state of structurelessness. And the structurelessness, although it seems like a good thing, a democratic thing, an egalitarian thing, there requires to be some structure just in order to maintain the democratic nature of that organization. There will be marginalized people involved in any organization, and specifically if it's an organization that specializes in marginalized people, they will certainly be more prevalent. But not all people are able to participate equally in a structureless environment. The people that are better able to speak in a forceful and meaningful fashion can sometimes dominate those that are not so good at that. It's not that the people that don't speak well have no good ideas. In fact, they probably have the best ideas. They probably know for themselves what would be best in this organization for them. But their inability to communicate that in a strong way means that they're excluded from that conversation. In order to have them included, there needs to be some structure there to mediate the power of the people that are participating in a discussion. The people that are straight white men, the people with good speaking voices, the people who are confident in their abilities as a speaker need to be held in check. There needs to be a certain amount of repression of that power in order to raise up the marginalized voices. On the other hand, well-meaning people in this organization may still be living out of this hierarchical mentality. Someone who thinks of themselves as an excellent leader, they may indeed have good leadership skills, but this could lead into delusions of power. This could lead to a situation where someone thinks themselves to be in charge of an organization and ends up actively squelching the voices of the marginalized. And this isn't a good thing. This ruins democracy. This could be the result of a revulsion against the standard hierarchy, an attempt to get themselves to a higher rank than they are in the main hierarchy of society. But it could just be aggression. It could be a pathological need for control of things. The contrast between these two modes of organization can be seen in the differences between the Black Lives Matter movement from last summer and the people who stormed the Capitol building couple of weeks ago. For Black Lives Matter, it is indeed a non-hierarchical organization. There is no leader of Black Lives Matter or Antifa or any of the other groups that were involved in that protest movement. There's no CEO of Antifa that's secretly funding and directing and ordering and moving people around to come and beat up your local community. It's just, that's a fantasy of the right wing and pop culture media. In reality, most of the decisions are being made on the ground, in real time, by ad hoc communication and negotiation between people who are actually participating in this movement. Yes, there are some leaderly voices that are coming from afar. There were a number of academics that were strong and very powerful voices in this movement that guided some of the philosophy and some of the tactics of the people that were involved. But that doesn't make them in charge. That just makes them an inspiring voice within this movement. On the other hand, for the people that are part of the QAnon movement or some of the MAGA people, well, they're obviously very hierarchical in nature. They believe in this Donald Trump, the supreme leader, the one that is at the very, very, very top, and they worship the people that have all the money, all the power within this organization. They value the fact that they have a position on the social ladder, and they really, really want to keep the people that are below them, or perceived to be below them, down there. By the logic of hierarchical thinking, it's only possible to rise up on the ladder by getting someone else beneath you. And so there's this shift in mentality between I want to improve myself to I want to keep everybody else down. In my last couple of videos, I've talked a lot about the narrative construction of reality and the way that the narrative of the QAnon phenomenon generated this decentralized but still extremely hierarchized form of social movement. Part of the appeal of the QAnon movement and related conspiracy theories is that it provides a strong, focusing narrative, one that provides clear rules about what the pecking order is in a hierarchical model. It tends to center people and make them understand their position in the world. And it also provides clear enemies, the people that one should consider to be lower than them and who they should be considering higher than them. When used effectively, these techniques can give rise to some pretty scary stuff. Effectively, what you saw in the Nazi movement in Germany in the early 20th century is a result of this sort of narrative manipulation. But the problem is that there is indeed a narrative void, one that needs to be filled in order for there not to be a breakdown. Anarchists sometimes struggle with this, because there is obviously not going to be total agreement between anyone who's involved in a movement that is anarchistically organized. So there needs to be some way for people to agree, or if not to agree, at least to have a framework for negotiation towards agreement. To this end, I'd like to introduce another concept, a holarchy. Not an anarchy, not a hierarchy, but a holarchy. This refers to an organization for a social organization that doesn't necessarily have a clear top and a clear bottom, but rather that we're all involved. And in some ways, one of us is on top, one of us is on bottom, but we're also vice versa. Everyone has a contribution to be made to the whole because we're all part of this same thing. Yes, there can be specialization. Yes, some people would be better at some tasks rather than others. But this allows us to see ourselves as part of a greater thing. Each person has value within an organization like this, and their value lies in their uniqueness. Each person's talents, each person's views need to be both considered in the decision-making process and also valued. And yes, some natural direction will emerge from this. There will certainly be people that have more of a talent for leadership, but this leadership ought not to happen in a hierarchical way. This leadership needs to take place in terms of, well, we all have ideas, we've collaborated towards this decision-making process, and now, through the path of individuals, we're able to make a decision as a group, as a collective. This is what I see as the main problem with modern politics. We have a system here where it's extremely hierarchical in nature. We have people who are on top, who are in charge, who by and large have money, and then the rest of us don't really get much of a say. Yes, we can lobby our representatives, but very infrequently does that actually have much impact, unless of course we ourselves have money. We also don't have real access to the levers of power, and certainly not on a federal level. In the United States, the accessibility of leadership involves the raising of a lot of campaign capital. It's outside the reach of the vast majority of people. Plus, you also have to be very good at a specific task, being convincing and folksy and winning an election campaign that doesn't necessarily make you any good at being a democratic politician. This competition-oriented politics just leads to people who are good at popularity contests being in charge of stuff. See Donald Trump. He's excellent in drawing attention, excellent at charming people, as gross as he is, but he had no talent for coordination, no leadership ability whatsoever, just a whole bunch of bluster. Representative democracy has this problem in general, especially in electoral politics. If the people are choosing based on the ability of someone to have bluster, have charm, have charisma, they're not necessarily considering the issues. They're considering the personality of the person that they're picking as their representative. And entering into this popularity contest, of course, is, well, money. By and large, the most wealthy candidate, the one that's able to raise the most campaign dollars, is generally the one that wins. So you end up with a position where most of your government are the ones that are wealthy, and so they make decisions based on the needs of the wealthy. Capitalism is an inherently hierarchical system. If you have people ranked by the amount of money they have, then they're going to be ranked in terms of their social organization as well. Whereas democracy, at its best, should not be hierarchical at all. It should be involving the views and needs of every single person that's involved, such that every person is valued and supported and raised up to the level of being able to participate fully. I would say, as a result, that capitalism is antagonistic towards democracy. We would need to get rid of capitalism, or at least solve its problems, in order to actually have a democratic form of government. But how do we get there without democracy? Problem is, hierarchy is built right into our brains. We're conditioned to it from birth, basically. And this is why I think so many revolutions on the left and on the right end up in a totalitarianism. When the existing structures are burned away, torn down by the anarchists or whatever other movement has risen to dominance, there's nothing left to take its place. And people don't know how to be actually democratic. And as such, a totalitarian comes in and says, well, I'll coordinate everything for you. Look at me. I'm very confident and I know what's what, so follow me. And then you end up with something like Stalin or Mao or any of the other dictators that have hijacked leftist revolutions in the past. How do we avoid this? Part of the secret here is in the worldview of the people that are participating. If we are going into a revolution with a worldview of hierarchy, a worldview where people are ranked according to their position on the social ladder, then we're going to end up reproducing those norms in the post-revolutionary world. So we need to change our mindset. We need to change the worldview so that we recognize and value and appreciate and draw in the needs and values of all people that are participating. It needs to be a condition of universal consent in order for a revolution or any other sort of mass social change to take place in a healthy way. As to how to do that, well, I don't have any specific plans. Really, what we need to do is just start changing minds one at a time. Get people to start understanding how vitally interconnected they are with one another and with the world around them. Because indeed, we are just part of one larger thing. This is the principle of Holarchy, where we're all just aspects, elements of one society, which is made up of many other components. If we start to view each other as same as ourselves, same position, same rank, same everything as ourselves, then we can start to understand our leaders as people who just specialize in coordinating, rather than people who are in charge. And when we're in a position of leadership, we understand the people that we're coordinating as simply talented at different things, rather than our subordinates. This isn't an insignificant project. It could take generations, and it could take significant amounts of narrative modification on the part of those who are in favor of this more egalitarian world. So I think we all need to be doing part of that. We need to start thinking of ourselves as not the center of attention, not the most important person in the story, but just one character. There are no non-player characters in the game of life. We're all in this together. Anyway, I do these videos daily, so if you enjoyed my content, feel free to subscribe and like the video if you could. It'll help out the channel. And share it with your friends if you could. I'd like to build an audience here, so I would appreciate your help. So once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.